Welcome to Let's Talk. My name is Dr. Kela Francis. I am the program leader for the Arts, Letters, Culture, and Public Affairs at the University of Trinidad and Tobago. Today, we will be discussing the upcoming RAMLEELA Symposium on November 1st and 2nd with the special theme of building community through culture. Today, I am joined with Dr. Sharda Patasar and Tyler Sookralli, two of our presenters at the symposium. So welcome to you both. Welcome Sharda and welcome Tyler. So I think the first thing we need to discuss really is why do a symposium about RAMLEELA? What is RAMLEELA really? And I know for most of us, we know the spectacle of it. We know it's a storytelling medium and it's, held over about 10 to 12 days and it's telling the story from the Ramayana. But what else about RAMLEELA should we know?
It's stories that I grew up with is that the indentured laborers came, they brought with them their texts, the religious texts, right? The Ramayana is particularly one of those that resonates with the indentured condition because it's a story of the King Rama who is exiled by his father along with his wife, right? His brother follows them as well. So it's that story of the exile is particularly resonant for us as Caribbean people because we are basically all displaced people here, right? So for me, when I look at RAMLEELA, I'm looking at the reenactment of a feeling that is both the story of displacement, but also a story of connection and community. So that's what I would describe it as.
Yes. And I don't know if Tyler, if you would like to chime in.
Yes, so everything that Dr. Sharda just said makes a lot of sense, and I agree completely. The thematic resonance of the Ramayana and the RAMLEELA stories, is what really drives that connection between the Indo-Caribbean community and, beyond. I would just add that something that I talk about in my presentation is the idea of the Bollywoodization of RAMLEELA music, right? So along with the feelings of displacement, indentured trauma, there's also this feeling of wanting to connect home, and we see that in recent years with the inclusion of more Bollywood music during RAMLEELA performances, this desire to still be part of the greater Indian network.
Okay, that's interesting, and I think we can build on that idea of community, both community in Trinidad and Tobago, but community according to diaspora, and that we can reconnect to our ancestral roots and draw strength from that. And I'm wondering, Tyler, if you want to talk a little bit more about that idea that's coming up in your presentation for the symposium. Don't want to sell too much, because we want people to come and listen to everything, but just to give them a little teaser of what they might be able to experience at the symposium.
Definitely. So one of the questions that I pose at the end is the value of this transcontinental community bonding, right? So for the Indo-Caribbean community, particularly the Indo-Caribbean Hindu community, to connect with India in this way, right? Through the Ramcharitmanas, the Ramayana, RAMLEELA. Is there a value to this, or is there perhaps a negative to this, right? When we're forming communities, we are in a way also isolating other people outside of those communities, right? So what does that look like in a place like Trinidad and Tobago that's so diverse, right, and has all these different communities? By connecting to, you know, what's called like Mother India, are we not leaving out the other people of the island that maybe we should be connecting with instead? So it kind of raises this idea of, you know, are communities inherently isolative, and if so, how do we navigate that? How do we still connect with home without, you know, drawing distance between ourselves and others?
That's an interesting point. I think it speaks a lot to the work Sharda does as well. So full disclosure, we spent an entire 4 days in Jamaica talking about culture and discovering how easy it is, once we're actually rooted in ancestral culture, to make connections with other communities and other cultures. And I think part of the interesting thing, and I would like you to talk about this more, part of the interesting thing then of doing a symposium on Ramleela is allowing us to center in that tradition and culture so that we can now feel secure enough to communicate with other cultures. So I hope I'm not throwing you under the bus.
Well, yeah, it kind of threw me under the bus because I was listening to Tyler's question as well when we came up with that question of how do we root ourselves, but yet create new things, right? And that's always the pull and turn that happens culturally. For me, I think of myself more as Hindu than Indian, right? Because Hinduism itself gives me a root, something to anchor in, versus this idea of Indianness, right? To me, Ramleela it's one of those spaces that speaks to that complexity as well. Because one of the thoughts that I had looking at Ramleela across the country, do people conceptualize their identities in different ways through these performances? It's one of those questions. And then therefore, how does that lend to how they root themselves? It's not a question that I have answers for, because I feel that identity is, even that one identity that we call Indianness or we call Hinduism, has multiple layers, right, and multiple ways of conceptualizing it. So you'll find that in the way that they in the dress, in the music that they use, in the language that they choose to enact it. So I'm feeling that my work deals more with the feeling part of it rather than the tangible parts of it. I find it an easier way to work.
I think that's very important, because we live in a world that forces us to focus on the material.
Yes,
and it's really good to have a space, at least a 2-day conversation about the immaterial, about these deeper concepts of identity, of what it means, you know. And similar in, well, I'll say there are two carnivals. There's the carnival we see, right? And there's a deeper carnival that we experience that we often don't have a name for. And there's a similar conversation that needs to happen, yes, right? Because both in the tradition of Ramleela and in the tradition of carnival, there's this idea of transformation. When you put on the costume, you are and you are not yourself. And how does that affect how we then understand ourselves is an important question, yes, right? And I think when you come to a symposium like this, right, and you hear the different perspectives, because that's part of the magic of a symposium. You hear different perspectives. So when you come to a symposium like this and you hear different perspectives of something hopefully you've already experienced in your own way, and you can then connect with how other people experience it, how other people understand it, so that you have your own understanding of what Ramleela is and how Ramleela affects you, either as a participant or an observer. What I love about Trinidad is that we are a very unique space. As Sharda said, we are displaced people finding homes here. And we tend to react at the very core, based on some similar understandings. And I think once we understand those similar drives or impeti, we will understand each other better, and we would, have a better coexistence in this little twin island state. So the idea behind this symposium, especially as we're looking at building culture building community through culture, right? And we heard a little bit about what Tyler wants to do, what he will be presenting. I don't know if you want to talk a little bit about what you will be presenting at the symposium. Again, teasers.
Well, I'm taking a concept that I've been working through for the past year from a music perspective, but it has its roots in the Natya Shastra, which is one of the main theoretical texts for theater. Mm-hmm. So it's relevant to looking at Ramleela and its concept of ras, which the academics are not in agreement with as to how to define it. So it's the only term that doesn't really have a definition. We looked at generally as the essence of a thing, but so I'm looking at how rasa, how that interpretation of ras feeds into how we think about belonging, right? Because again, it goes down to not just emotion, but it's juicing that emotion for its many shades. Because when we talk about happiness or we talk about sadness, they're not just one feeling. They have so many shades within them. So that's what my talk will more philosophically, how that lends to identity and belonging.
Very interesting. Very interesting. And I don't know how serendipitous it is. It's very serendipitous to me that you are both pulling from musical tradition as part of the lens for understanding Ramleela. And it's interesting to me because it is a multifaceted performance. In my work, I like to talk about it as narrative. So music is one narrative form, acting is one narrative form, dancing is one narrative form, right? And I won't say necessarily unique to Trinidad, but embodied in a lot of our Trinidadian intangible culture is this merging of narratives to tell a single story. And I'm looking forward to hearing these perspectives at the symposium to see, the resonances between cultures and between how we tell stories and how being here on this island also influences how we tell stories. Right. Tyler, I don't know if you want to chime in a little bit on what you might be looking forward to in general in the symposium.
Yes, I'm really excited to. Well, first off, I'm from the United States, so I just want to experience more of like, the Trinidadian Tobagoan culture and just get to see that in live action. My grandparents are from Trinidad, but it's been a couple of generations since, I've been directly there. So I think for most of it, I just hands-on grounding the things that I've been reading about. I do all this research on Ramlila, Trinidadian culture, but now. By participating in the symposium, I'm directly engaging with that culture and getting to witness it firsthand, and it's absolutely beautiful.
Thank you. And we look forward to having you. So we're going to go to a quick break, and when we come back, we'll have lots more to discuss.
Are you renewing your motor, homeowner or business insurances shortly? Then call Kalyani Limited, agency for Tatil, for a competitive quote. With 2 locations, Todd Street, El Socorro and 5 Rivers, Aruca. Please call us at 221-5051 or 227-5051. Kalyani Limited, agency for Tatil, building relationships exceeding expectations.
And welcome back to Let's Talk. And we're talking today about the upcoming symposium on Ramleela, November 1st and 2nd. One of the interesting things about academia, and I suppose we don't get a lot of credit for it because, we are considered snooty or high-minded, but we're in the business of narrative. We're in the business of trying to make clear something that we know deep in our souls as a collective people, but we might not understand on the surface. So we try to give it that language. We try to craft a story around that so people can understand themselves better. And a symposium that is focusing on building community through culture helps us understand the things we do, that we intrinsically understand the value of it, we know the value of it, but to have it said out loud is always a special thing, it's always a special narrative. And so we like to engage in research to tell our own stories, because if we don't tell our own stories, who will? And will we like what they say? Right? So I hope to see a lot of people coming down to the symposium to hear the story of themselves, from people who've done research, who've done a lot of thinking of this and tried to clarify what might be a very emotional or subconscious understanding of what we do. Right? And that broadens out beyond the symposium to what we do at the University of Trinidad and Tobago, and especially in the Academy of Arts, Letters, Culture and Public Affairs. We focus a lot on that idea of culture. Trinidad is very rich in culture and cultural expressions and practices, and we feel it is our job to bring it forth, to focus on it, to do research on it, to help us understand us in a way that we can really, enrich our lives. I would invite both Tyler and Dr. Patasar to talk a little bit about that research process for them and what they think the role of academia is in terms of understanding culture, promoting culture, preserving culture. So I don't know who would like to start. Let me throw it to Tyler and see if you've thought about it.
Yeah, definitely. I'd say I was very impressed with the abundance of material that there is to research specifically for Ramleela. Going into this, I did not expect there to be so much to pull from. I did not expect that there was so much scholarship already being done on it, and I think that's a very, very good thing. I think, coming from the United States and looking into Trinidadian culture, I recognize that in Trinidad there's a high prioritization, a high emphasis on thinking critically, on thinking academically, much more than I think we have here. So I think overall I was just very impressed, and I know that the material of the symposium is going to reflect all that abundance and wealth of research that's out there. Yes, Dr. Sharda, if you'd like to continue from there.
My experience of research is exactly what you're saying, building stories, right? But for me, one of the important things is how it changes you as well as a person. It feels like a process where you're constantly thinking and fleshing things out if you're very serious about it and focused. It takes a lot of time to try to understand, and that's what I like particularly about field work. Moving out into the communities, to feel communities, to understand where I thought I belonged, I don't really belong. To come to that recognition that sometimes even in my own space I'm an outsider. That is humbling, and I think for someone teaching students as well, part of the process that we don't focus on is that humbling that happens from learning. So for me, it's a very dynamic process of seeing another, but also seeing myself within that communication and connection. So I think that this symposium on Ramlila, it will offer various angles through which we enter that one particular performance. So I'm looking forward to hearing what people have to say.
Yes, I am looking forward to. And I'm going to make a shameless plug. Part of the reason for doing a symposium like this is, one, yes, we need to talk about ourselves. Two, it's to gauge the interest in pursuing Ramlila academically. One of the things we would like to do at the Academy is offer a certificate in Ramlila Studies, because we believe that it is it's both rich material and a gateway for us to discuss ourselves and research ourselves and understand ourselves. And we're not necessarily coming from an insulated place, because Ramlila is also recognized by UNESCO as an intangible heritage, which means it is enshrined in UNESCO as something to be protected. And at the university, at my academy especially, we think it is part of our duty to make sure that we protect our intangible heritage. So we also do a Masters of Arts in Carnival Studies, and we are looking at building out our intangible cultural studies programs, because we think beyond oil and gas, Trinidad and Tobago's wealth is its culture, right? People from all over the world want to come here. You heard from Tyler, he's looking forward to coming here. And yes, for the symposium, but also there's magic in our soil when we touch down on it. The richness of our culture, the richness of our expressions. And we have a lot to teach the world, but first we have to teach ourselves, right? And symposiums like this, certificates in Ramlila Studies, Master of Arts and Carnival Studies is one tool we can use in academia to teach us about us. So I want to throw it back to Tyler. If you want to share some further thoughts on your own research and how that then feeds back into Trinidad knowing about Trinidad and Tobago, Trinidad and Tobago knowing about Trinidad and Tobago.
Yes, so I suppose I would say that the biggest connection here, right, or the overarching theme is the connection between art and humanity, right? And by understanding Ramlila, we're coming to understand a very important art form. And with that, we're coming to understand a certain group of people of the island. And it's really beautiful to hear that your institution also offers a Master of Arts in Carnival Studies, because it's a similar idea of by studying the arts, especially this particular form of art, you're unraveling so much about the humans behind that art, right? The humans that create that art, that have created that art for centuries. So I really enjoy, and that's something that I've noticed with my own research, that by looking into Ramlila, I've learned so much just about Indian indentureship overall, about the Indo-Caribbean community overall. So it's beautiful to see that UTT is offering systems and organizational methods of going about this form of study.
Thank you. And I want to throw the same question to you, Sharda. How do you see your research impacting Trinidad and Tobago in general?
I think it offers a different lens through which to look at the work, because we use a lot of what you call it, not the traditional work. For instance, my work comes from the Indian theoretical traditions, the Natya Shastra, the Sangeet Ratnakar. Those are my texts that I'm using now, together with the ones that you get from traditional academia. So in a nutshell, I think it would be more to show how the arts can be used not just as performance, but as a way to think critically, and think critically across the board, not only about the arts, but when we think politics, we think economics. That too is a narrative. Those are all stories born of ideas. And when we boil it down, they're really all ideas. So for me, that's what I hope to do through my work.
Thank you. And it's an interesting point. I don't think, or we are trained not to think, that most of the systems that we have are narratives, they are stories. And one of the important things to do, whether it's from an Indian perspective, an African perspective, a Chinese perspective, Amerindian or First Peoples perspective, European perspective, whichever perspective you want to choose, it is very important for us to understand that we construct the world. And through studying art, through talking about culture, we start to learn that this is partly natural, yes, but it's something we can change, we can adjust, and we can grow from. And symposiums like the one coming up November 1st to 2nd, talking about Ramlila, is a perfect space for us to start these kind of examinations where we look beyond, or we're actually forced to think critically about the systems we embrace and why, and do they work for us, and can we do something else? Can we be something else? How do we push Trinidad and Tobago forward? Because we're small, but the amount of impact Trinidad and Tobago has had on the world so far, without us even trying, is miraculous, So imagine if we took it seriously, or as Dr. Mia Motley says, we take those moonshots, and we are basing it on cultural practices that we have here, right? That help tell the story of us. And we base our confidence on that. And, there's nothing stopping us as a nation. We have a few minutes left, so I'm wondering if y'all would like to wrap up with final thoughts, and then we can close off. So I don't know if you want to start with any final thoughts.
I think the final thoughts about the symposium, about the academy. I think it holds a very important place. I think the university itself is fertile ground because it's building, and there is a lot of opportunity there for harnessing the research capabilities. I see it as a fresh think tank. So those would be a venture like this is a very good start. The community-based work I find very, very powerful. So,
And you, Tyler?
To add on, I really enjoyed that one key word in Dr. Sharda's statement, community, right? Because that's all that this is about at the end of the day. It doesn't matter from which background you come. It's about the idea of art representing a people's, right? And that is a trend that we see across space, across time, for all groups of individuals. So this is all about community, and I encourage you to attend the symposium because you'll get to witness a community coming together, be part of that community coming together, and what's better than that?
Thank you. So it's just left for me to remind you that the RAMLEELA Symposium, Building Community Through Culture, will be at the Diwali Nagasar site, November 1st to 2nd. So come out, join us for conversation. We'll also have workshops so that you can get to experience dressing up for RAMLEELA, makeup for RAMLEELA, performance. So you will come away with both philosophical and practical knowledge from this symposium. Thank you so much to my guests, Dr. Sharda Patasar and Mr. Tyler Sookralli, who will both be presenting at our upcoming symposium. Thank you for your thoughts and interesting food for thought as well. And thank you for joining us, the wider audience. We look forward to seeing you next weekend, November 1st to 2nd, at the RAMLEELA Symposium.